I want to talk about a set of experiences I've had over the last decade working both in K-12 reform and in adult ed reform with very different results. But I want to start with, in the short term, my sense is that there are only two levers that substantially reduce poverty rates. They are both at the national level. I think locally, there ain't nothing you can do to substantially reduce poverty rates in the short term. And I'm sort of tired of doing short-term stuff. Our big problem's long-term and structural. We better deal with it. The national stuff that matters are full employment and an expanded safety net. You have those two things, they dramatically reduce poverty rates. And we need to do both. But Michigan had an interesting experience. In the late 90s, we had labor shortages. We had full employment. And particularly in Metro Detroit and in the city of Detroit. Now, we got big reductions in the poverty rate, largely because pay went up a bit, but work hours went up. But, and this is, I think, a very important point, we ended up in the situation where all sorts of folks could get hired, but chronically unemployed folks could not stay hired. They simply did not have the skills, no matter what the job. I mean, this is the inability to hold a McDonald's job full time. So we ended up with sort of a working age population, non-disabled in the city, where you had about a 60%, in the 60s labor force participation rate, in the suburbs 80%. So we've basically ended up the same place Joe has ended up, which is, other than full employment and expanded safety net, the stuff that matters most, the substantial reduction in poverty rates, is human capital. And that's where the story gets interesting. I've had an opportunity over the last 10 or 15 years to work on both high school reform and adult training reform. And in one system, we've made substantial improvements, and the other we haven't. And unless we make in the system we've had substantial improvement in is high schools. 15 years ago, it was open question whether low-income minority kids could learn, could graduate, could be ready for college. Today, we have a whole set of high schools here who are doing just that, not here but around the country. In adult education, we have made almost no progress. For those who are chronically unemployed, we still do not have a system that builds work identity and soft skills so that people can hold jobs. And the reason we have shortages in all these middle school jobs is not the absence of money. I mean, we're actually awash in training money at the moment. And it's not the absence of a technical training system. Our community colleges actually do a good job. But what we have is two problems that we've not gone through yet. One is a whole number of people who don't want to go into training. But for those who do want to go to training, they end up in remedial programs because they don't have the foundation skills to do the technical training, and they do not get out of the remedial programs. So what's happened on the high school side that's enabled us to make change that has not happened on the adult training side? And I would argue it is the policy changes that did two things. One, that allowed choice. Basically, through charter schools and public school choice, you have the money following the participants, so you have all sorts of new entrants and innovation. It's the new stuff that's transforming the system, not the old stuff. You do not, and accountability standards that are meaningful. So what happened, and so that we now know about graduation rates and college attendance rates and academic scores and all the rest of that stuff. Choice and accountability are missing in the adult training system. So we have a system that for decades now, it's the same providers with the same programs and the same lousy results and no change. So from our perspective, if you want to reduce the poverty rate, other than full employment and an expanded safety net, if you want to do something locally, you've got to fundamentally change the results, not the funding, the results of the adult training system. And at least our conclusion is you're not doing that as long as you have a closed system that basically protects current operators no matter whether they work or not. So good. I did this in 4 minutes. Thanks.